Hello and good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for coming and being here as part of the opening weekend of the 2024 Tuba Bach Festival. It is exciting to have you here. 19 years into it, so that's pretty cool. So, want to thank some folks for making all of this happen and all of this possible. And if you're watching online on YouTube or Tuba Bach, hello. Happy to have you join us. First and foremost, Emmanuel Lutheran Church. This is a great place to be, isn't it? So it's a wonderful place to play. It's a great place to be in the audience. It looks great and it sounds great. And so many thanks to Emmanuel. And if you would like to spend more time here, lots of options. One, for the next 5 Saturdays and Sundays, you can come to concerts. So I encourage you to do that. Sunday mornings at 9:30 is service time. Next Sunday, by the way, there's an open house here because it's the 150th anniversary of the Scandinavian Lutheran churches here in Big Rapids. So a big celebration for that. Special service at 9:30 and then lots of other things in the early afternoon. And then you might as well stick around for a concert. So that's what I would do. Also, new this year, on the third Thursday of every month, Barbara Pillsbury is hosting what she calls a classic matinee movies with Barbara. And so every third Thursday right here, there's a screen that we hang up on the wall. You missed Casablanca last month, but so you'll have to watch that on your own. So this Thursday on the 19th, The Humid Comedy. So if you haven't heard of that, it's Mickey Rooney and Van Johnson and all of that. And then there's a whole bunch more. So there are, out on the table out there's some slips and there's some smaller cards too, and there's a poster. But come and enjoy, and Barbara's just a terrific host for those. So we encourage you to do that. So Emmanuel Lutheran Church Ferris State University has been taking good care of Tuba Bach since 2006. So we appreciate the support of of Dr. Pink and all the folks at Ferris State University. The Marlis Myron Memorial Fund helps us do a lot of educational and community outreach kinds of things. So a quick note on that, this year, one of the things that we're doing on Saturday mornings, I get asked a lot, so okay, you're playing this concert on Saturday night, Sunday afternoon, or whatever. How long have you guys been working on this program? And I say, well, since yesterday. And I said, no, but I mean to practice. I said, since yesterday. So, and they said, but how can you possibly do that? So, Saturday mornings from 10 till noon. In reality, that's not true. Usually we start on Friday. Saturday mornings, 10 till noon. Having open rehearsals in here. So if you would like to watch, I think I put in an email somewhere, if you want to see how the sausage is made, come and do it. And then you'll say, and then come back on Saturday night and Sunday and see how much more it progressed since then too. So it's a lot of fun, but we encourage you to do that, and it's an educational opportunity, especially if if you are a musician type yourself, or if you know young people that are interested in being musicians and how that whole thing works. It really is cool to sit. Concerts are fun. Noah and I were talking about this not long ago. Concerts are fun, but have always learned way more by watching people rehearse and how the concerts go together and all that. So we invite you here on Saturday mornings. Aaron and I had a chance to go up to Royal View out in Canadian Lakes on Friday. So anyway, all that goes to talk about the kinds of things that the Marlis Myron Memorial Fund does, and we appreciate that. The Michigan Arts and Culture Council and the National Endowment for the Arts, that's one of the good ways. They're all good, aren't they? One of the really excellent ways your tax dollars are at work. So we appreciate the support from those organizations. And Michigan State University College of Music has been a partner with Tuba Bach for the last 4 years now, and we're excited about that. So, and there are lots of other advertisers and things like that. If you're watching online, I think they scroll across your screen every now and then. And so support our sponsors. You can flip through the program. You can go to the website and find all of them, and please thank them. If you are here in the audience, by the way, I think I said something before we started, turn your phones off so they don't make noise. If you are the kind of person that can't help but play with your phone, first off, I would say stop that, watch the concert, it's good for you. Don't worry about it, you can find out if the Lions won later. You don't need to know right now. But if you can't help yourself playing with your phone, I would suggest on the cover, we've added this handy little QR code for a Venmo thing, so use your phone for that and support Tuba Bach. We appreciate that. So, I'm not going to talk again until towards the very, very end of the show, and Aaron's going to get you through the show. But I need to introduce you to who's on stage here with me. We're excited to have him for, I do believe now, the 17th year, because I think the first time was in 2008, the one and only, the amazing Mr. Alvin Waddles. Yeah. I'm assuming most of you here, know why you just did that. If you haven't experienced Alvin yet, all right. You are in for a treat. This young lady is Alirna Korieva. Alirna is our Tuba Bach artist in residence for 2024. She was here last fall, and we had such a good time, and she did so many things. I said, hey, you gotta do some more concerts and try some different things out. She's a doctoral student in violin down at Michigan State University, but also an amazing jazz singer. So she was here with our summer concert, singing the whole time. She'll be here in 2 weeks with a string quartet of some other doctoral students. She'll be here in 2 weeks after that with an international group. We'll talk more about that later. But Alirna Korieva. The young man in the back, also in 2008, I think was the first time he played with Tuba Bach when he was 6. So to help me feel old, so he's finishing up his master's degree down at State this year. So doing wonderful things in the music world as a composer, as a performer, a pianist, a percussionist, an organist, all those things. So always a super pleasure for me to get to play with my kid, Noah Mallett. And then 3 years ago, I think, in February, so if you are Big Rapids people, you know the whole month of February is a Festival of the Arts, month-long Festival of the Arts. And 3 years ago, as I was looking to program that festival, we were looking through the Michigan Humanities Council guidebook of what kinds of things were out there, and I came across a group called the Corn Potato String Band. I said, well, I don't know what they sound like, but they got like the best name in the world. And so we had the Corn Potato String Band come, And that particular group included Aaron Jonah Lewis. And so the music was great, the square dancing was great, and all of that, and the conversation was good, and I thought, sometime I gotta have Aaron come back. And so, this is it. We've talked about some projects and things, and a couple years ago, Alvin and Noah and Alvin's son Dominic and I did a CD project of some ragtime stuff, and I passed that on to Aaron, and I said, oh my gosh, Kindred Spirits, ragtime stuff, let's do it. And so I am super, super excited to have over here with the banjo and lots of scholarly commentary and things like that, Aaron Jonah Lewis. And then finally, one last thing to clap about. I'm done talking until the end of the show.
Yes. Now it's time for me to do some talking. Thanks for coming out today. We're going to play a lot of ragtime and some other music that's not exactly ragtime, but is ragtime adjacent. And we're going to be featuring the banjo on most of these pieces. And I just want to give a little bit of background. So, ragtime music comes from banjo music, which is not something that I knew when I was getting into it. I found this out more recently, so I'm very excited to share it. Banjo, as some of you may know, was invented by enslaved African people in the New World, as the so-called New World. Earliest documentation for the banjo goes back to late 17th century Jamaica. And it's a really great vehicle for exploring American history because it's always been in the hands of working people since before there was a United States of America, even before colonial times really got settled in. The things that I want to share about ragtime are that it was the first sort of cohesive music and dance movement in this country, really in the world, that became commercial and widely accepted and celebrated. And it originated with black people in the US. The other thing about ragtime music is that to me it represents the peak of popular culture just before recording technology became widely available. And that's really worth noting. I want to invite you to listen to this program and imagine that you're not able to get in your car and turn on the radio afterwards. You're not able to go home and put on a record or a CD or tell a smart speaker to play the radio or anything else. Basically, for all of human history until about 100 years ago, the only way we could experience music was when people were playing it for each other. And in those days, when ragtime was popular, Scott Joplin's Maple Leaf Rag, according to some sources, sold 1 million copies. It was 1 million copies of sheet music. That was what people did. They didn't watch TV. They didn't have internet or video games. They would play music with each other. And so, when recording technology became available and recordings were marketed to people, that's when genres were introduced and people were told, well, you're black, you play blues and gospel. You're white, you play hillbilly music. And, these divisions were introduced. And ragtime predates that. So I just want to invite you to kind of connect with a sense of history here, a sense of living history that, of course, is also open to innovation. It's a living history. So we have original arrangements of these ragtime pieces to share with you. And we're going to start out with the piece that put ragtime music on the map. Probably the most well-known piece that we're going to play for you today is written by Scott Joplin, who many would say is the greatest ragtime composer of all time. This was published in 1899, and it's called The Maple Leaf Rag. The next piece we're going to play for you comes from 1909, 10 years after the Maple Leaf Rag had been published. This one's by a white composer named Henry Lodge, and it's called The Temptation Rag. If you feel like moving around or dancing, this was dance music. This was also art music. It was kind of both. I might say a little bit more about that a little later, but I wonder, what were the temptations of 1909? Here's The Temptation Rag. One, two. So at the time that ragtime was becoming a national craze, around the late 19th century, the banjo was the most popular instrument in the English-speaking world on both sides of the Atlantic. We're going to share a piece with you now by a British banjo composer. This was composed in the 1940s, many, many decades after. And I also want to share that the banjo was, this banjo music, even though it predated recording technology and has mostly been forgotten, it was more popular than rock and roll. So if you can just imagine, 100 years from now, nobody knows who the Beatles were, no one's heard of Michael Jackson. That's kind of like what we're doing here. We're bringing back some music that was incredibly popular back in the day. So this next piece is kind of a ragtime waltz written by British banjo composer Frank Laws. It's called Progressions. So Ed first saw me playing with Corn Potato String Band, and I mostly play fiddle with that group. So he insisted that I play some fiddle as well. And we're going to feature Alvin on this next one with his amazing Fats Waller interpretation of a great classic, Sit Right Down and Write Myself a Letter.
I'm gonna sit right down and write myself a letter and make believe it came from you. I'm going to write what's oh so sweet. They're gonna knock me off my feet, put lots of kisses down on the bottom. I'll be glad I got him. I'm going to write and say, I hope you're feeling better. And sign it, love, just the way you do. I'm going to sit right down and write myself a letter and make believe it came from you. right down and write myself a letter, 'cause I'm tired of waiting one for you, and make believe that it came from you, you lousy son of a... I'm gonna write what's oh so sweet. They're gonna knock me off my size 12 feet. Put lots of kisses down on the bottom. You're gonna be sorry that you ain't got them. I'm gonna write and say, I hope you're feeling better. That's a lie. I hope you're sick as a dog. And sign it, love, just the way you used to do. Used to do. Well, I'm gonna sit right down and write myself an epistle with a missile, honey. And I'm gonna make believe it came. That's a low down dirty shame. I gotta make believe that letter came from you.
Alvin Waddles, everybody. Okay, so that's kind of like if we're in the ragtime window, we just jumped way ahead to another dimension, and now we're going to go right back to where we were and play some music that, you know, sort of fed into the creation of jazz, you know? So, you know, jazz kind of is sort of like new and improved ragtime. A little more wild and free. But, you know, at the time that ragtime was popular, that was considered wild and free. It was considered scandalous music by the establishment. It was considered a threat to people's morals and stuff. So, this next one is by James Scott, who is considered to be up there with Scott Joplin as one of the greatest ragtime composers of all time. This one is called The Ragtime Oriole. We're going to play a piece for you now by another British composer named Joe Morley. And Joe Morley, I like to call him the Mozart of the banjo because his influence was such that if you wanted to get into pre-ragtime classic banjo music, you would say Joe Morley is where you'd want to start, kind of in the way that if I said to you, what's classical music? I've never heard it. You'd probably start me off with some Mozart and say, listen to this. Joe Morley, also like Mozart, was a child prodigy, and he was very prolific. He wrote hundreds and hundreds of pieces in his lifetime, many of which are still unpublished. Also like Mozart, he died poor and was buried in an unmarked grave. And this piece of his is a bolero, which is just one example of the diversity of styles that banjo composers were employing. So the bolero is a particular dance style. It's a slow 3/4 style. And this one is called El Contrabandista. We're going to play a novelty rag for you now that was written by George Cobb, and it was based on a piece by Rachmaninoff. So this leads me into a little bit of discussion around genres and the different kinds of music that were popular at the turn of the century versus later on after the recording technology became more widely available. So some people say there were only really two kinds of music back when ragtime was popular. There was educated people's music, elite people's music, wealthy people's music. You could call this art music, or maybe we would call it classical music now. And then there was working class people's music, entertainment music, folk music. And these were not sharply divided. Oftentimes, a classical composer would take a folk melody and make it into a classical piece, or something that a classical composer came up with would become a folk melody. It would become very popular and adopted, and variations would be made upon it. So Rachmaninoff, back in 1892, first performed his famous prelude in C-sharp minor. And it was so popular, so enduringly popular, that by the time that George Cobb wrote The Russian Rag in 1918, it was so popular that a performer could play just the first 3 notes of this piece, and the crowd would go crazy because they loved hearing this piece so much. So Alvin's going to play a little bit of the famous Rachmaninoff prelude, and then we're going to go right into the interpolation of it by George Cobb called The Russian Rag. We're going to play another novelty piece for you now. This one's not quite ragtime, but it was a popular dance number. And when I was researching this piece, I asked an older friend of mine who really knows a lot more than me if he could help me find some of the original scores for this piece. And he said, "Why do you want to play that piece? It's a throwaway tune. It's not one of the greatest hits of music history, you know?" And I said, "That's exactly why I want to play it. Not only is it totally ridiculous, it's a ridiculous piece of music. But it also provides a window, you know, it's a deeper cut, you know, it's like if all you get to hear are the greatest hits, then you're missing out on what was actually going on at that time period. So this is a piece that kind of gives us a little window into like a one-hit wonder sort of a piece that people were dancing to in 1914. This was by Clarence Jones, and it's called Thanks for the Lobster. Serious music, people. So we're going to play a couple of pieces from Mexico now, from northern Mexico, from 100 years ago, roughly. I live in southwest Detroit, which is 90% populated by Latin American people, or people from Latin America, and they don't like this music. They don't care for it. It's old. It's even older than their grandparents, you know? But I still think it's very delightful, and honestly, there's not a lot of things I enjoy more than playing with another fiddle player. So, yeah, we're gonna start with a waltz called El Poder del Amor, and then we're going to play a polka called Peor es Nada. And these come from a group called El Trio Alegre. Kind of all over the place today, but this is the way we like it. Never doing one thing for too long. We're going to play another James Scott number for you now. This one's from 1906, and apparently it was a response to the Maple Leaf Rag. All it really has in common, aside from being a really great classic ragtime piece, is the first two notes. After that, it's its own thing. But I also like to think that the title of this piece may be somewhat autobiographical. James Scott was known to be, he would get excited when he was playing a piece, when he was playing the piano, and he would wrap his leg around the piano, around the leg of the bench and hop up and down. This one's called the Frog Legs Rag. 1 and 2. And now Noah and I are going to play a duet for you, a banjo xylophone duet. This is the moment that some of you might have been waiting for. When are they going to do a banjo xylophone duet? Here's Rag Pickings. We're going to feature Alirna on this next one. This is another Fats Waller piece featuring Alirna and Alvin. And I'm going to play a little bit of fiddle on it as well. This is Honeysuckle Rose.
Every honeybee fills with jealousy when they see you out with me. I don't blame them You're my sweet goodness, no. You're my honeysuckle. Don't buy sugar. It's really bad for you. You just have to touch my cup. You're my sugar. It's sweet when you steal it up. When I'm taking sips from your tasty lips, sips the honey fairly drips. Your confection, goodness knows, you're my honeysuckle.
Yeah, sure. I know some of you are wondering, when are we going to feature Noah on the xylophone again? That time is now, my friends.
Yeah.
We're going to play a piece for you by G.H. Green, the great ragtime xylophone composer, arranged by Noah. This one's called Ragtime Robin. I've been asked to do a solo number for you now, so I'm going to do a piece that is a kind of a nice example of how ragtime music filtered down through the recording process into the hills of Appalachia. And this one is a country rag that I got from fiddlin' Arthur Smith, one of my favorite fiddlers of all time. This is called The House of David Blues. There's a bigger story behind this song that I would totally love to share if I had more time. But you know, the House of David had its roots right here in Michigan, and it had a national impact. It was a cult that preached, among other things, abstinence. And so, you know, there was no drinking, no smoking, no sex allowed of any kind. So they're not around anymore. But while they were around, and since they weren't producing converts biologically the way most religious people do, they would go out on street corners and play music for people. And so they had these famous bands, you know, they had all this energy they would put into their music. So this song, while it's mostly nonsense, it refers to those House of David bands. And this one is called The House of David Blues. Gee, but ain't it grand, can't you hear that band play those House of David blues? All the folks in town gathering round to see the funny things they do. When ham was selling for $1 a pound, I ate so many rabbits, made me hop all around. Gee, but ain't it grand, can't you hear that band play those House of David blues? Gee, but ain't it grand, can't you hear that band play those House of David blues? All the folks in town gathering round to see the funny things they do. Well, a Dominic, a rooster, and a bow-legged hen, they may go together, but they ain't no kin. Gee, but ain't it grand, can't you hear that band play those House of David blues? We're going to do a piece for you now that was written by a couple of ragtime professors in Baltimore back in around 1905. Their names were U.B. Blake and Huey Wolford. Some of you may have heard of U.B. Blake. He was the longest living member of the original generation of ragtime composers. He was also one of those greatest of all time ragtime composers. And he was alive to see the first ragtime revival of the 1970s. You all happen to be lucky enough to be around for the second great ragtime revival of the 2020s, right? We're just at the beginning of it. So the story behind this song goes that, Huey and Yubi were sort of friendly rivals on the Baltimore scene. And one night, Huey was at the piano, and Yubi said to him, Huey, I bet you would rag anything, wouldn't you? Church lady comes up and asks you to play her favorite hymn, and you would just rag it, wouldn't you? And he was like, yeah, man, I would rag it, And Yubi says, well, no, I wouldn't, because I want to get a good tip. That would just make her angry. I bet you would even just rag the scale, wouldn't you? And so right then and there, Huey starts playing this piece. He starts ragging the scale. This one's called Ragging the Scale. And, Yubi, kind of took it and added some of his own stuff to it. And they both loved to play it. For years and years they played it. 10 years later, a white composer named Edward Claypole copyrighted it. So if you look this piece up, it'll say it was written by Edward Claypole, which is not true. So it's my privilege to be able to set the record straight a little bit. And, in his autobiography, someone interviewed him and asked Yubi why he didn't copyright it himself. And he said, it would have felt foolish to copyright the scale. So this piece is full of that musical tool, that musical device called the scale. And for those of you who are musically inclined, you can listen and see how many times you can hear a scale in this piece. Here we go with Raggin' the Scale. that's how you play a scale, folks. All right, we just have a couple numbers left in the concert for you today. Thank you so much for coming out. You really cheered me up a lot. Yeah. This second to last piece comes from a Detroit composer named Harry P. Guy. And it's really a great example of how ragtime can be both playful and also exquisitely beautiful. This one is called Pearl of the Harem.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. That was fun, eh? Yeah. And a little tiring, too. Look at that. Excuse me. I have to breathe for a second. So, one more song to go in weekend number 1 of the festival, but there's still 5 more weeks to go. So hope that you'll all be back in some form or another, watching online or listening on the radio or however you're doing that, or hopefully right here in the seats. We would love to see you all again. Next weekend is a show I call the All-Star Guitar Quartet. So a little bit like this weekend, one of my favorite things to do is to bring people together that don't know each other and see what happens and the magic and stuff. So, and this is what happens this weekend. So it's yeah, absolutely. And so new people can learn from each other and all of that. So next weekend actually isn't as much like that as I thought that it was. So Tony McManus is a Celtic guitar player from Scotland, and he was here 2 summers ago, something like that, and he and I did a concert, and we talked about this project, the idea of doing that. He said, oh, that'd be great. So Paul Asbell is a guitarist from Vermont and does blues and Americana, and I thought, well, that'll be kind of cool to have something totally different. And I called Paul and told him about it and said, this would be kind of neat, and I don't, it'll be weird because you're going to be together with this guy from Scotland. He said, oh, Tony, I know Tony, we play concerts together all the time. So I said, okay. So there's 2 that know what's going on. So then I was talking to Randy Napoleon. Randy is played with the Freddie Cole Trio and all that for years. He's now a professor of jazz guitar down at Michigan State. So Randy's going to come up and play, and he's all excited about it. So good news, he doesn't know Tony, and he doesn't know Paul. So this will be great. And then I thought, well, who's going to be the 4th person on this whole thing to do? And so this past summer, we did a jazz concert, and there was a bass player that came up, Jeff Pedraz. I said, you know what, actually, might be a good idea to have a bass player to hold everything kind of together, and I was talking to Jeff, he says, oh yeah, I played in a Celtic band once, and that was really cool, and I did this and this, and it turns out, oh, and I played in the Freddie Cole Trio with Randy. So as it turns out, for 4 people that don't know each other, they all know each other, and so that's going to be really cool next weekend. And then the weekend after that, Alirna is back, absolutely, with 3 other young ladies from Michigan State. They're all doctoral students, a string quartet, and that's going to be, we're playing some premieres of some new music. Noah has a brand new piece that we're going to premiere that weekend, and some other exciting things, so that's then. And then the week after that, October 5th and 6th, Noah will be back with a percussion quartet. So Noah, and then Gwen Dees is professor of percussion at State, so she'll be up. Dan Ingman is a doctoral student at the Hart School of Music in Connecticut. And then for you townies that know folks around, Kramer Milan is going to be back. He's a homegrown hero, and he is now professor of percussion out in Idaho, out in Boise, and so he's going to be back in town. So that will be a ton of fun. The 5th week, Alirna will be back. Orbis Sonorum Quartet means, what was that? World of sound, yeah? A whole world of sound. And so this is another one. I don't know if everybody knows everybody in this group, do they?
They're just going to meet each other for the first
They're going to, okay, so everybody's going to meet each other for the first time. And it's an exciting thing. So Alirna has done something like this in Uzbekistan, too, with a different group. But so we're going to bring people together from different cultures and learn from each other and share stuff. And whatever happens is going to happen that weekend, and it's going to be really cool. So Alirna here from Uzbekistan. Sandro Sidamanidze is a cellist from the Republic of Georgia. Jordan Anderson is a jazz pianist from Minnesota, but with family roots in Cameroon in West Africa. So Minnesota's kind of a foreign country too. And then Angel Hernandez is a Latin American, Caribbean percussionist. So that's going to be very exciting. And then the final weekend of the 2024 festival, the Vintage Vocal Quartet, 4 professors from the Berklee College of Music out in Boston. It's all 40s and 50s, 30s, 40s, 50s swing music, things like that, and just exquisite vocal harmonies, and they all happen to be instrumentalists as well. So, Taylor plays the piano, and David plays the bass, and Paul plays guitar, and Chris plays drums. So this is going to be exciting, and we're going to do some vocal workshop stuff with local singers and all of that. And so it's going to be an exciting weekend, so please come for all that. There's more things coming throughout the year with MSU students and faculty coming up. Christmas concert, Alvin will be back, so along with others. So all of that is to say, please come back. We look forward to having you here. Again, thank all of our sponsors, all of our advertisers. If you know some of the folks that are in here, please thank them for supporting the arts in our community. If you don't know them, take a minute and stop by their business and thank them and get to know their business. There is a page in here, 2 pages of folks like yourselves that contribute and donate, thank you so much, because this whole thing happens because of people like you. If you would like to contribute and haven't yet, as I said, well, there's that Venmo code in the front. That works. There's tubas by the door on your way out. Those take cash and checks. Adriana and Jane are kind of there. They can help you through with credit cards and things like that. There's a whole table full of things out there that's mostly merch from Aaron. Lots of CDs and postcards and vinyl and sheet music and whatever you may need to get your banjo career going. And there's some Tuba Bach ones too. So stop by that table. Thanks to Jeff over here at Command Central for making the whole live stream thing happen. So we appreciate that. And wherever he may be, other Jeff, we thank him. And Paul is back here at the cameras, and Adriana and Jane get you in. So thanks to lots of people. Thanks to you all for being here. It's great to be back doing this again in the fall, my favorite time. And then the biggest thing of all, thanks to these wonderful musicians, again, one more time, the amazing Alvin Waddles. Come back at Christmas. Alirna Korieva. Noah Mallett. And Aaron Jonah Lewis. Please stick around after the concert. If you go that way past the lobby, Mom's Cookies are over there. So have Mom's Cookies and meet the artists and enjoy yourselves, and I look forward to talking to you. One final piece, and while I sit down, Aaron's going to tell you about it and what it is.
How about a hand for Ed Mallett, putting this one together for 19 years. So our final piece, again, just to connect with this period of time in history, this was before we had talkies. And so silent films were usually accompanied by a theater organ. And I like to imagine that in towns where they didn't have an organ, maybe there was a banjo player who would play. This last piece we're going to play for you is a very cinematic experience. It's very visual. I think there's a lot of character, a lot of landscape in this piece. It's a very thrilling, kind of an adventure story. It's by British banjo composer Emil Grimshaw, and it's called A Footlight Favorite.